Oh, yes, it began. So, good evening, everyone. So, let us begin our session on rural entrepreneurship. So, before going to the details of this session, I will just want to let you all know why we thought of such a session. So, when we go through the various reports about rural entrepreneurship. Actually, I grew up here listening to Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, but I don't. We listen to all those things even now, but then prominence for that Kisan part is not that much nowadays. So because the colorful pull and lure of urban life has taken the charm away from our rural life. So when we see all these big malls and buildings, so naturally you all want to be a part of that. So we started migrating. We started migrating to urban areas, though our incomes are more there, but I don't think the kind of comfort that not the comfort, actually, the kind of serene peace that we could get in the rural is not available there. But still, we want those comforts, and then we moved on. So, as per Niti Aayog, it says that rural economy constitutes 46% of national income. And they also predict that the urbanization, though the urbanization is rising, but even in 2050, more than half of the Indian population will be in rural area itself. So now that means to say that our strength actually lies in rural economy. So it becomes our responsibility to work towards that and how to improve, how to utilize whatever that we have in rural area, and then improve our economy as a whole. So the rising strength of our rural economy has given us hope that the kind of economic slowdown that COVID has induced, we feel that rural economy can definitely help us uplift the national economy, not drastically, but at least marginally. And agriculture accounts to more than one third of rural income, but it still is deprived of the status that it actually deserves. And that is where people like Manas comes into picture. So he is an educated, young entrepreneur, and so what we want to know from Manas is what made him think about the rural entrepreneurship when everybody is planning to migrate to cities and build a life there and join corporates. So he thought a little different, and then he is now a successful entrepreneur. Within a few years, he has made a mark in this area. So these are the things that we want to hear from Manas. And let me tell you how I came to know about Manas. Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education had conducted a workshop for the B schools. And Halya School of Management also participated in that. That was a workshop for the faculty members. And he was one of the resource people. He was sharing his experience there. And it was quite impressive. I thought that our students also, the other students also should listen to him and get a little bit of idea on how we can contribute towards the rural economy and then thereby improving the national economy as a whole, be a big player in that area because that area needs all our attention now. Now I welcome Ashwati Suresh Babu, first year MBA student of Ahalya School of Management, to welcome the participants and also welcome our chief guest. Ashwati, are you available?
Yes,
Ashwati, can you hear me? Yes, yes. Just
yeah, ma'am,
please come forward. Yes, please come forward and then propose the welcome address. Ashwati, please go ahead.
Good evening. A warm welcome to all. We are gathered here for a webinar conducted by Ahalya Group of Educational Institution in association with Rural Entrepreneurship Development Cell, Ministry of Education, Government of India. On the topic, I chose to be a rural entrepreneur. It's my honor and a privilege to welcome our chief guest and speaker, Mr. Manas Madhu sir. He is a founder and director of Dr. Jackfruit India Private Limited, a food enthusiast trying to bring science in craft of superior food, founder of Beyond Snack, a plant-based savory snack brand, a believer in rural empowerment, obsessed about creating superior customers experience, and a father. I welcome you, sir. Next, I welcome our respected Sri P.R. Sri Mahadevan Pillai, sir, the director of Ahalya Group of Academic Institution and the principal of Ahalya School of Engineering and Technology. We welcome you, sir. I would like to welcome Krishna Kumar, sir, Assistant Director of Ahalya Group of Educational Institution. I heartily welcome all external students, staffs, faculty, and students of Ahalya Group of Academic Institution in this webinar. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashruti.
Thank you, Shruti.
Now, Anas, the floor
Anas,
is
the
all
floor
yours.
is all yours.
Please enlighten
Please
us,
enlighten us,
students.
students.
Thank you. Thank you, Bindu. Let me just share my screen first.
Okay.
Can you see my screen, my presentation?
Yes, yes.
Okay. You're able to see my presentation, right?
Yes, it can be seen. Yes.
Okay.
Now something else has come up. Yeah.
How about now?
Now it is a PPT. It's not a slideshow actually. Now the slideshow is there.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for hosting me, Ahalya School of Business and all the associated institutions. It's a great privilege to be here, and I'm really excited about the fact that there's a large young crowd present over here to know more about rural entrepreneurship. So without wasting much of our time, let me just run you through how we are going to structure the next 60 minutes of our time. I will take you through my experience, quickly run you through my experience as a rural entrepreneur, and then some of the learnings that I had in that process. And then I will try to look back and try to define rural entrepreneurship on basis of my learnings and some of my experience. Then I'll also touch upon some of the challenges, myths, and trends that is prevailing around the rural entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I'll try to conclude all my content within 40 minutes of our time, so that we'll be having a 15 to 20 minutes of our solid time for discussion. So that I'm expecting it to be I'll be discussing a lot of debatable topics, and I will invite any sort of questions that you have. I'm more than happy to address it. I would love to this to be a very interactive session, so that if you can get the better benefit out of it. So quickly about me, I'm an accidental engineer. I believe that I am more of a businessman than an engineer. So entrepreneur is a word that gained a lot of traction in the last couple of 7 to 10 years, I believe. But before that, it was just a businessman or a businesswoman is what the prevailing name. But now a businessman or a businesswoman is just a terminology which is a subset of entrepreneurship as a whole. And so I will rephrase myself as an entrepreneur. I'm passionate about what I do right now. We try to bring in the superior quality food products, the food that we love always, and we are trying to bring in some more science into that. so that we make it a much more hygienically and much more better quality product into the market. I'm not sure whether you have heard about our product. We manufacture banana chips and jackfruit chips, and we have multiple flavors in that. And we bring it in a standardized format. Our product Beyond Snack, which is available in almost all major retail shops in Trivandrum and some of the retail shops in Cochin. And we are pretty much present in all the online platforms and hyperlocal delivery systems in all over Kerala and some parts of Bangalore. And we are present in Bangalore also in retail shops. If you are not accessible to any of these places, then you can still go ahead and order it in Amazon or a Flipkart. We have pretty good presence over there also. Other than that, some other small stuff about me that I love to read. And I'm also coming from a rural area, which is in Alleppey district, and I'm a father of a girl. Before starting my entrepreneurial journey, what exactly was I is what I'm going to address now. So it was after this story happened right after my engineering days. When I went there to the office to collect my TC, the principal over there took me aside and he told me that, Manas, let me give you a short small advice to you. I said, what is it? So he said, forget about engineering. So I don't think engineering suits you really well. Maybe you can look out to get some good admission in some of the better colleges out there. I think for MBA, not for engineering. I think he was just randomly saying that, but when I look back, I realized why he was saying is because even if it is an engineering college, I was more focused on conducting arts festivals or Onam celebrations or those kinds of celebratory or events, rather than focusing more on academics. So he was just casually telling that, but I started giving a deep thought about it. I started working in a couple of companies, but this MBA somehow creeped into my mind. And I started giving a couple of competitive examinations, and finally got into one of the colleges in Pune, which is Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, 2011. That is when the real grip about the business started creeping into me, and I started giving more attention to a lot of businesses, business aspect, some of the emerging trends. However, by end of that MBA, I got selected in one of the corporate consulting company in Mumbai, and I started working there. I was working for Coca-Cola, and then after that, I shifted to Bangalore for the same project. But again, after 2 years, this entrepreneurial bug bit me again, and I started thinking about moving back to Kerala to put more focus on that. But I was not really sure on I love food, and I have a lot of ideas in the food industry, but I was not really quite sure, or maybe I was not really that confident also at that point of time. But I thought I'll start exploring further, and I started looking out for a job in Kerala, and finally I got one in Trivandrum. And every Saturdays and Sundays I try to travel a lot and try to meet people who are directly or indirectly connected to food in some way or other. That was a very eye-opening experience. I came to know a lot about food industry. But back in my mind, this rural entrepreneurship and rural empowerment, all these things were there. But how to bring it all together into one bucket is what the question that I was searching for. Anyway, that journey ended up in a place where I came up with a new product. Jackfruit as a mock meat. So basically, it is a tender form of the jackfruit is more like a meaty texture. So the product which I came up at that point of time was a mock meat product from jackfruit. It is a vegetarian product. Frankly speaking, it was a failed product. Failed product in the sense, the product was able to create enthusiasm in people's mind, but it failed to monetize that enthusiasm. People are skeptical. People don't know what to do with the product, and a lot of other factors. So there is a saying that the product has to, for a product to be a failure, then you just need one reason. And if a product to be successful, it need a lot of reasons and all to be combined in actual ratio. So that is what happened. That product was an actual failure. Then I decided, so I'm sure if you are aware about the terminology called pivot. If it is not, then it's more like a startup terminology that if a particular product or a service that you're offering to the consumer is not really working well, you immediately shift your focus towards something that works really well, something that provide a solution for a problem that consumer face, a more relevant problem. So that terminology is called pivoting. So I also pivoted in that sense, and that actually happened when I was traveling to Mumbai for a trade show. And on that journey, I got into a restaurant for some food, and right while I was paying my bill, I saw that jackfruit chips were stacked on that table in a small packets. I thought of giving it a try. Anyway, I was working in this jackfruit field, so I thought of giving it a try. But the product was really bad, and that prompted me to think in that way that why there is no organized player in this market for jackfruit chips or banana chips. These are some of the product that we love, or people all over India, or to an extent maybe other parts of the world also, they love this. But why there is no organized player or someone who is manufacturing in a branded organized format? So then that took me to a lot of experimenting, and a lot of meeting people to understand more about the market. And finally, Beyond Snack originated. We conducted a lot of trials. We set up a small manufacturing plant in one of the rural places. I'll come to that point in some time. Then we launched a minimum viable product in the market. A minimum viable product means it's not the actual form of the product, a proper form of the product, but it is more like a miniature version in which you wanted to test the product in the market and to get more information from feedback from the market, and you try to incorporate those feedback back into the product and make a better product. That is what minimum viable product. I'm sure you must be aware of it, but still. So we launched an MVP, and then based on the feedback, we managed to bring in more information into the system, and try to get a better product. And finally, we launched Beyond Snack as banana chips in multiple flavors, and Beyond Jack as a jackfruit chips in multiple flavors. So there was a time period between this, that the moment we decided that we are going ahead with a manufacturing plant of our own and launching the launching the product, there was a time gap in between this time frame. This is the time where we came across a lot of information about rural entrepreneurship, and a lot of reality check, and a lot of understanding about what exactly is it, and what exactly were my thought process and how the reality is. So there was a big gap also we witnessed over there. So initially I thought it was just about job creation, setting up a plant in one of the rural area that will create a lot of jobs in that area. But we slowly and steadily we realized that this is not just about job creation. This is something more than that. We are witnessing a lot of good things as well as some challenging stuff. How we address all these challenge and how we leverage on these good things to give a better output, to bring up a better rural entrepreneurial ecosystem, is what actually happened in the remaining periods of time. Let me just take you through that. So the place where we established our manufacturing unit is in a rural places in the southernmost part of Kerala, which is post Trivandrum. It is on the en route to Kanyakumari border. The speciality of this rural, I'll just give you how I can make sense into it. There is one, the only connectivity of this particular place to the outer world is just one public transport, which is a bus, which is coming morning and in the evening. So those who wanted to go out using a public transport, this is the only mode. And the job scenario over there was not really impressive. Majority of the people, husbands are working, but housewives on the woman part of that, they were not really working. They didn't have much of an opportunity, or they feel that they're stuck in that place, or that kind of a feel. So anyway, when we started off our project over there, people are really happy about that. Something coming up over there to look forward. So they came up and they are asking, is there any job? But how much job we can create as one one particular manufacturing entity in a rural place? But we still collected all the information, like, the contact details and everything. And, we told them that we will let you know once the opportunity comes in. Anyway, after 8 months of our work over there, we started, operations in that area. We started off with 9 people in that, from hiring 9 ladies from that rural area. One thing we witnessed in the very initial stage is that the kind of sense of responsibility and the sense of the sense of importance that they feel about themselves, or they feel about the existence of this company in that region is really cannot put it in words. The reason is that they feel that this is their company, and they feel that there is a lot they can make out of it. So there is a future. They started feeling there is a future. And some of the things that we noticed is that a lot of people are interested in working with us, but it is just that we need to match the demand, right? There is the demand. We are slowly working to increase on the market side, but only when the demand is matching with the supply, we can make that much amount of product. Only then we can hire more people. So what happened is, in between, one of our machines stopped working, and we started hiring. We started manually do some work in that area. What we have done is that instead of bringing all the people to our factory, we started giving the raw materials to their houses. But we cannot randomly just give this, because food is one of the sensitive business in which the hygiene and quality plays a lot of importance, and you need to ensure that everything associated with the food is at its best, when it goes into the market. So we just don't want to take much of a risk over there. We thought of giving on an experimental basis. We selected some 8 people, 8 more housewives from that area, and we started training them. Training in the sense how they can process the raw materials sitting at their home in a hygienic and standardized way. So we started giving some training, like how to wear mask, how to wear the gloves, and how to wear hairnet, the importance of that, how to approach it, how to cut it, and we started giving some trainings. Believe me, the kind of the impact that it has created in their life is huge. We think that this is really a small initiative that we are doing, but from their perspective, they feel a sense of importance then, because only somebody feels that they could get the job done, only those people will give training to them, right? That is what their fundamental understanding is. And that's how they started feeling a lot more proud about the fact that they are working for our company, and they started giving more importance, and they feel that they are cooking something for their loved ones. And that's how they started looking at our raw materials. Without much of a time, we expanded it from 8 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 23, and within no time we touched 48 housewives. In a sense that we supply every morning. Their time frame is more likely that 9 o'clock they'll be free, because 8 o'clock majority of the husbands will be going out for their own jobs, and 8:30 their kids will be leaving to schools, and 8:30 to 9 o'clock it will be more of a me time for them. They're relaxing or cleaning up the kitchen and everything, and 9 o'clock they'll be free. This is the time. By around 8:50, 9 o'clock, we also supply our raw materials to their houses. They started working. And initially it was taking, the collecting back raw material will go up to 7 o'clock at night, but eventually we can see that the speed is catching up with them. They are 7 o'clock, it became 5 o'clock. We started getting the raw materials back at 5 o'clock. Then eventually we can see that 4:30, 3 o'clock, the efficiency is improving. They are also feeling a lot more proud about the fact that they're making a living out of it. So one of the things that we learned in between is that identifying that mutual mode of support, right? Where exactly they can fit in, and how exactly we can contribute back into their life. This balance is identifying this mutual support, mutual balance is one of the key area that turned out to be a huge success for our operational efficiency in the future. Some of the learnings that we came across in this process. So finding the right balance. Finding the right balance in entrepreneurial, finding the right balance means this is actually a very fine, thin line, if you look at it, because you do something for that rural community, and whatever you are doing is making some sort of changes in that community. and you started feeling that their lives are changing and they are feeling much more empowered. So there is a chance that you forget about business in this process, and you just jumped into it, and you invest more money to make the rural community better. Of course, that is one of the end result that you wanted, but you should not forget about business, because a rural entrepreneurship is, according to me, it's entrepreneurship first, and the second is rural empowerment. You should not forget about the fact that it is just a rural empowerment, because only if the business sustains, you will be able to continue give that kind of a support to that rural community. What if the business not sustains? Because you can see that the product is selling really well in the market, the money is coming back, but instead of focusing more on expanding the business, you put more money into hitting more people into the system. Eventually what happened is that you will burn out all your cash, and the business will stop sustaining in the market, which eventually means that the rural community is getting affected, because they also stop getting those kind of benefits that they're getting. So very thin line in between. You need to realize what exactly you're dealing with. Start off really small. Instead of hiring 100 people in one go, what we have done is that we hired only 9 people initially, and then we started hiring 8 more people by supplying it to their houses, then to take to 10, 11. So we realized this process is much more stable and in control. Instead of we had a lot of pressure also, I have to admit it, that a lot of people coming to our place and asking for a job. I also want a job. You only this community is very much connected. Rural community is very connected. You can understand that. So they know that when we supply it to their houses, why you're not supplying it to our houses? Those kind of small complaints and everything. But you should not get overwhelmed in that. You should have a plan. So if possible, educate them. Tell them that this is what our plan is. Our plan is to take it from 48 to 50 and eventually to 100 or 150 houses, so that the entire rural community is getting impacted in the future. So educate them. They will understand that. Sustainability is the key. Like I said, you should not go back and forget about the fact that this business, you need to ensure that your business is sustainable enough, so that in the future also you will be able to continue to give that kind of a benefit that you're providing to that rural community. And you need to accept the reality that change cannot be made overnight. You cannot bring in a positive vibe in each and every person's life just overnight. It is just a process. It's an ongoing, continuously improving process. You need to be patient. You need to wait for that and continuously work and strive for that. And always remember, it's all about progress and not perfection. You can continue immediately. You can hire some 100 people and run out of cash in the initial stage. No, don't do that. Instead of that, slow and steady progress, and that is what you need to focus on. Some of the learnings that these are. So based on these learnings and based on these are ground level execution that we have done, we try to look back and try to define what rural entrepreneurship is all about. This might sound a little very far away from the actual theoretical knowledge that we have grabbed from the books, but let me tell you, rural entrepreneurship is not just about a business operating in a rural area. If it is just a rural business operating in a rural area, then it is not going to make any difference in people's life. That is not the whole idea behind a rural entrepreneurship. It's all about the economic development of the community. You need to ensure that the people are getting benefited out of it. Eventually, slowly and steadily, you can add more people into that, and maybe some sort of you can do a lot of economic welfare schemes in the future by slowly and steadily adding up the kind of the work that you're doing right now. This rural entrepreneurship is also about improve the standards of living of the rural community, right? Slowly and steadily, they started dreaming more, right? Early stages, they were wondering how they send their kids to a college, because they also don't want their kids to stuck in that place. They wanted to go out and explore, but they don't have a clue. But now they started dreaming, because I can save a little more money, because husband's money is I can utilize it for our kharka karcha. Then the rest of the money I can put it for a little bit of savings, or maybe in the future I can confidently take a loan, education loan. They started dreaming. So improve the standards of living. Then there's a lot of other aspects also to rural entrepreneurship. It is utilization of the local resources. Understand that one of the things that we are doing right now. So one of a new factories coming up in Pathanamthitta district. So Pathanamthitta, the speciality of Pathanamthitta is that it is a certified rural district, by the way. So good thing is 50% of that district is forest area, and the remaining 50% is majority constituted to the rural population. We started we are working on a new plant over there, but one thing that we noticed is that there is a lot of farmers that we can partner over there. We already partner with a lot of farmers, but this speciality is of this area is that we are trying to pass on some great quality technical resources to these farmers, so that they can improve their yield, improve their crop efficiency, and that is a betterment for our business also, and for them also. And these technical know-hows that we are passing on to them, they could utilize it in the future. For the farmer is not just harvesting one crop, they will be harvesting multiple crops. There are farmers who harvest in that mode. So they could utilize the same know-hows into their other crops that they're harvesting. So utilizing that local resource to its fullest, optimizing it, and make the best out of those resources in a sustainable way is also a facet of rural entrepreneurship. And again, I keep on saying this again and again, that remember, entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship first, and then the rural empowerment second. Because going back to that same tone, that sustainability, you need to ensure that the benefit that you are giving to the rural community, it should sustain, right? For that, the business should sustain. So ensure that you are not doing anything to jeopardize your business, but at the same time, constantly giving back to the rural community. So rural entrepreneurship it's not all smooth. It's not a smooth ride all of the time, right? There is a lot of challenges that we face in between. Some of the challenges, these are all execution level challenges that we faced. You also will be, if you are getting into this, you can expect these kind of challenges will definitely come up in one form or other. One is logistics, because when you are working in a rural area, the connectivity would be a problem. So how you are going to get the required material for manufacturing to that place is a question. You need to foresee that, this logistical aspect. Majority of the time, what happened is that the third-party logistics companies are also, like in the transportation companies, and your suppliers also. These people will be working based out of the urban area, right? Getting that particular product or services from there to your place is a challenge. This is one of the challenges that we faced. And the connectivity wise, even the road over there is not really great, because it's nobody is paying attention to those aspects, right? But it is our objective to ensure that we need to expect these challenges, we need to foresee these challenges before laying out a plan. Location preference of professional executive means you need a lot of, in my business, it's a food business, right? You need a lot of technically trained professionals for checking the quality of the food. There is the standardization part, the testing, a lot of the process areas where you require trained professionals. But majority of the trained professionals would prefer urban area than a rural area. So in order to get a person from who has an urban mentality to asking or prompting them to work in a rural area would be a bit of a challenge that you need to expect. Accessibility wise, imagine that suddenly there is a complaint happened to your machines, or something happened with your manufacturing unit. Immediately, the accessibility wise, it's a big problem, because all these service providers are also working based off of urban area. So that you need to foresee these problems. And stigma, like I said, the women in that rural area were really interested in working for us, but it is not just their call, right? There is a lot of other factors, right? Some of their husbands don't believe in this. They don't think that they have to go for working. So we had to convince them, because we believe that a person with interest at their heart is much more valuable than a converted person or a person with a less interest. Because a woman who is this actually happened for multiple cases where the woman came to our place and asking us to provide raw material to their house, but ensure that you only separate after 10 o'clock, because that before 10 o'clock, my husband will go, and after that I can do that. I wanted to do that. So convincing part we are doing, but to an extent we are facing some sort of resistance over there. But imagine their interest level, and these are some of the stigmas also that you need to face. And one of the major challenges is that this is more of a business challenge rather than an operational challenge. A startup, we operate as a startup, and a startup, one of the major factor of a startup, growth of a startup is the scale at which it is growing, right? In a startup world, it is called blitzscaling, which means you really don't have much of a time with you. You just running crazily and speeding up the process, getting more customers, getting more revenue, and producing more and supplying more. So it's an ongoing process, and you cannot really stop or slow down in between. That's how a startup works. But when it comes to rural entrepreneurship, that kind of a blitzscaling is possible only when you have a backup of a lot of funds coming back from the venture capital ecosystems or a fundraising ecosystem, right? So lately there are some changes which is happening in that area as well, which I'll touch upon in some time. But by and large, there is a lot of resistance in that area, that people are very skeptical. A major skepticism is because they also feel that sometimes this rural entrepreneur will forget about the fact that this is a for-profit business. Yeah, I mean, this actually happened. Even it happened in our case also. But however, there are some changes which I'll touch upon in some time. So blitzscaling is one of the major challenges you will feel that there is a resistance in scaling up really fast, because the kind of cash that you can bring in from the external sources is limited. Some of the common myths. That it's not a charity. Rural entrepreneurship is not charity. You are not running a charitable institution. You are running a business, a for-profit business. And because of that, business sustainability matters a lot for their own well-being of the rural community. You should not get confused with a charity. So there are a lot of people think, so yeah, I mean, he is doing a lot of support, right? You can support in this way also, put some money into the charity. No, this is not about charity. This is about empowerment. The third point is pretty much matching with the first point, which is this is more than just a help. People think that this is just a help, nothing to do with empowerment. But you need to realize that this is not just about help. This is more than that. This is just empowering people, bringing up confidence in them, the kind of the confidence that you can actually feel, the kind of the confidence in the people working for you. Eventually, slowly scaling up. It became a celebration for them in the future. Initially, they were all skeptical, but eventually they get that confidence. And second point is just about job creation, right? This was a misconception even I also had. This is not just about misconception. This is not just about job creation, right? This is about more. This is about economic well-being of the rural community, and utilizing the resources and contributing back for a better utilization of that resources. Rural entrepreneurship has a different facets, different styles, and take its own forms. Be open to all those. And then again, another common myth: business is secondary. Rural support empowerment is primary. No, it's the other way around. It is all you need to, again, business is first, and then the rural empowerment comes the second part. Some of the trends that is happening in the rural entrepreneurship. Exclusive investment scenario. So like I told you some time back, that blitzscaling, one of the challenges that we are facing in blitzscaling, right? There are some changes which is happening in the past in a couple of, I would say 2 years, that a lot of people started investing in rural entrepreneurs. They wanted to promote them because they are actually seeing a lot of potential in such a collaboration. And there are a lot of support from the governments. Even we also got a lot of support from government, even central and state provide support to us in multiple forms. There are grants, there are credit linked subsidies, a lot of, you just need to look at the right forums, talk to right people, understand about them, and start applying them. Don't hesitate to apply on these benefits that you are getting, because all these are adding up to not just your benefit, but the whole company and the community that you're supporting. So avail those services. There are social entrepreneurship promotional funds. So, for example, rural entrepreneurship is a part of that. There are private equity firms and venture capitals started investing in a company which is having a social cause or a rural support or a rural ecosystem to back them up. So there are a lot of funds that is coming up right now. So even blitzscaling also is a challenge which I believe that in the next 5 to 10 years time will slowly vanish, and the opportunities will start flowing more in rural entrepreneurial direction. Reversal of the migration is more like I told you, majority of the trained professionals wanted to work in urban area because that's where the real opportunities is, or majority of the opportunities is right now. But there is a trend, even post-COVID, this actually accelerated a bit. That there is a trend that people wanted to come back, and if they get an opportunity in their own area, then they don't want to pass that, because a lot of factors contributing that, childhood memories, or low per capita, low cost for living. A lot of factors are adding up to that. But anyway, there is a trend slowly and steadily catching a trend of migrating back into the rural area is something that is coming up, which is beneficial for us. Having said that, there are some of the books also that I wanted to suggest to you to read more about it. Not just about rural entrepreneurship, but something that provides a supporting ecosystem for rural entrepreneurship. One of them is I Too Had a Dream. Of course, it's a coincidental thing that we are having this session on the very next day when we celebrating the 100th birthday of Verghese Kurian, the milkman. Right? You should, if you get a chance to read this book, go ahead and read this, because this will really open up a lot of insights into your thought process to give you more clarity on how to approach rural entrepreneurs or rural entrepreneurship, or how Verghese Kurian and his team were able to build Amul, or were able to bring up that white revolution. Is something that we can learn and get more insights about. And then fortune at the bottom of the pyramid is more related to the supply and the demand part of the rural side. This book talks about how big companies are leveraging on rural area to get more fortune, because they somehow sense that there is a lot of fortune in the rural area. Either it is launching a product which is crafted for rural parts, or is it because utilizing some of the operational aspect of operational benefits that a company can get it from the rural area. A lot of case studies, C.K. Prahlad was outlining how a lot of companies made fortune by just focusing on the bottom of the pyramid. Bottom of the pyramid means a rural area, by the way. And then there is a book called E-Myth. E-Myth is about it's not about rural entrepreneurship, but a lot of principles are applicable to rural entrepreneurship in that book. He talks about an entrepreneur is not just about a technical person. A technical know-how is not sufficient, but you need to look at all the business aspect of it to run it. Same applicable to rural entrepreneurship as well, because when you're running a business, you need to understand to apply a lot of business learnings into a lot of business aspects into it, just to ensure that you are getting the best out of your business, and then you can pass on that benefit to the rural community. So some of the book I believe that which would be beneficial for you. And I would like to wrap up the session by remembering our visionary great human. His vision was so profound that somehow I feel that the entire India is still indirectly, or maybe it is not directly, but indirectly all flowing towards that particular path. So thank you so much, and I'm open for all sort of questions. You can shoot questions. I'm expecting a lot of interaction from the crowd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manas. Actually, it's so nice to hear this, because I see that proudness in your voice, that you were able to empower so many lives. Yes, you mentioned that business is not charity, but then your voice really, reflected that proudness, that you were able to bring You were able to empower so many women. You were able to make them dream. You were able to make the standard of living better. So thank you very much for that. So now the forum is open for the participants to ask questions. I would request the participants to please put your questions in the chat box, and I will read it out to Manas, and he will be able to answer you. So he has done this presentation so very well. I think he has covered almost everything that a student will have in their mind when they are planning to venture, because the other business, there are so many help and support available. But when it comes to rural entrepreneurship, it's not that not too many people are venturing into that area. Maybe in future it will be, but then at the moment you don't have much of support available. So now we have a person.
The trend is changing. Trend is changing now. A lot of people are actually slowly and steadily venturing into that, because because of the positiveness in the atmosphere, and also a lot of companies are supporting them as well, like the private equity, venture capital, like I said. Okay, yeah, the question, please.
Okay, so now you can see, now we have a person who has faced so many challenges and who has made his mark in this field. So you have a resource person available with you. You can ask him a questions and he'll be able to answer you. So you can put the questions in the chat box. I see that so many felicitation messages are here. Thank you, but then, and to be frank, Manas, you have actually made it so simple and so nice. Now everybody started feeling that it is a lucrative area. We should also venture.
Yeah, if you feel that, then part of my objective is fulfilled.
Yes. See, the crowd itself shows that people are interested in this area, because we have around 240 participants. So
yeah,
that means to say that they are interested in this area. Okay, so there is one question from Anumol Joseph: how rural entrepreneurship is possible in this pandemic situation? She's very specific about the situation, but then here Manas himself said that you need to look forward for you should have a foresight, not just think about today. Maybe if it would be nice if you could answer, how did you manage your business in this pandemic situation?
Yeah. So couple of like any other businesses, we also faced a lot of challenges. Especially one of our product we had to completely stop, because jackfruit is something that we actually, how the entire system is that we go to houses and we collect jackfruit and we bring it into our places and we distribute it to multiple houses. That's how it was working. But with this pandemic, the whole that system ruptures, and we cannot really go to houses, collect it from there, or even, as a matter of fact, we cannot really give it to their houses for the primary processing. The only thing is that see, we need to rely, like I said, the sustainability is the most important, one of the most important aspect, right? You need to look at how to sustain this business in this tough time to ensure that you can continue give that benefits to the people. So we had to resort completely on banana during this time, and we had to completely shut down that operation of jackfruit. We still get a lot of inquiries about jackfruit, when is it coming back, and but the thing is that the banana, the thing is, there are a lot of organized farmers existing in the market. We just can just go ahead and tie up with them. They will supply it into our places, and then we can call the ladies up to our places and then manufacture it. But jackfruit, it is really tough. So we also faced it, but it is to ensure that you cut the cost to maximum. Wherever it is possible, you can go lean and save a lot of money during this process, just to ensure that you are sustainable in this process. Once the pandemic is over, you are going to come back pretty fast. And then until that time, you need to survive, right? So keep that survival mode on, just to ensure that the cash, you are not spending it in unnecessary places, and keep the cash flow stable and steady. That is the way in which you can.
Yeah, that's really lovely, because everybody has faced the wrath of this pandemic,
yes,
and no business is alien to it. But then anyway, we will have to survive, right? Yeah, there is another question from Jitin P. What are the barriers and struggles you faced in venturing on initial days?
So a lot of people say this, that the first couple of years are really tough. I usually correct them. Yeah, the first couple of years are really tough, but after that, it's not going to be easy. You get used to that toughness, and it will be a day-to-day affair for you. So it is not that in the initial days we still face challenges, but some of them that you can expect is that the setting up the infrastructure or getting the money is one of the major factor when it comes to the scaling up process. So ensure that now there are a lot of great business models available even for the rural entrepreneurs, that the how to leverage on asset light model. You can read about that asset light model, business model. A lot of rural entrepreneurships are venturing through that, but I am saying that the challenges we cannot just generalize into one or two, but yeah, trying to find the right kind of people, trying to find the right infrastructure, trying to find the right amount of funds that is required in the initial stages. These are some of the challenges, but these are never-ending challenges. By the way, you can keep expecting it.
Okay, that's a lovely answer. Participants, I have posted the feedback form on the chat box, so please do fill in that. And there are so many questions. I'm not sure we will be able to cover all of them, but I will just. What are the difficulties, if any, being an entrepreneur in a state which is not perceived to be industry friendly? This is a question from Sinara Justin.
Can you just read out that question?
Okay, it is like, what are the difficulties being an entrepreneur in a state which is not perceived to be an industry friendly state? So Kerala is not perceived to be an industry friendly state. So
frankly speaking, this is not the first time that I am hearing this question, but let me just correct you there. There is a reason why I come back to Kerala and started my business in Kerala, because I had an option to start my business in Bangalore because I was there, and I even had an opportunity to start in some other places. But I chose to be I chose Kerala, and I chose to come back to Kerala and start the business over here. One of the things is that maybe my yesterday generation will be having a different opinion, but in my perspective, Kerala is the most investment-friendly place if you look at it. So I'll give you a quick anecdote, that actually happened some time back. This was in World, I think it was World Food Forum. I think some time back I was visiting there, and there was a particular panel discussion which is happening, and I was also part of that panel. And all the eminent personalities, all the bureaucrats, all the higher officials from IAS, IPS, all these people were sitting there. And one of the questions from a Tamil Nadu person was that we wanted to convert a particular land from one crop to another. The harvesting. How fast you can do it in Kerala, because there it takes a lot of time. The process. So the answer was given by our KSIDC MD at that point of time. The answer is this, and you just need to register in one of the portal, and it will ask all the details and all the information, and you just submit it, click it, and approve it. Next day you will be having an approval, whether it is approved or not, and then you can start it. Believe me, this particular answer created a sort of ripples all around. People were okay. Majority of the people over there were from other states. They wanted to know how the situations in Kerala. And this actually sent out a positive vibe around there. So there are a lot of things that are changing right now. Even look at our case, there are government himself are coming up with a lot of schemes and supporting us. They love the concept. They wanted us to provide even more similar kind of support to the rural people. So they are supporting us, and they provided us the schemes. They connected with a lot of people, for a lot of know-how and technical aspects, and even fund aspect as well. So I really don't believe that, because in my experience, Kerala is very much investment friendly.
Okay, so you sound to be very positive, and you have experienced it also. So
right.
I think that kind of confusion and doubt is cleared from most of their minds. Thank you, Manas, for that. Was it easy for you to get the statutory clearances? So there is again another, this is what most of the people will feel, that could be hurdles.
Yeah. So these hurdles are actually taking a different form these days, right? See, not just Kerala, right? Every state realize that economic well-being is possible only through, not only, but majorly through entrepreneurship. Because every government wants new business to come up. Why? Because only new business can create new jobs, new economic welfare in that community, there will be a lot of transactions, right? Only when the transactions increases, then the economic system also improves a better. So that kind of a situation happens only when there are a lot of companies started popping up, and that is the reason why even central and state government are providing a lot of support for entrepreneurs, right? They wanted to support the people, those who are supporting entrepreneurs, such as angel investors. There was a tax before, now there is no tax, because whatever conducive environment that they could create to make a better ecosystem for entrepreneurship, they are doing it. Every state has to do that. And some of the initiatives you must be already know that single window clearances, and you don't need a particular license for starting your business in the initial couple of days. So a lot of things are there. You just need to just look around that and ask the right questions to a certain set of right people. You know that. And second thing, even if there are some challenges, these are all challenges that you can definitely overcome, just to ensure that you stay on top of it and get it done. And if you have that willpower to get it done, then it is not going to be a problem at all. But by and large, that kind of a scenario is changing. People are more entrepreneurial friendly. The governments are more entrepreneurial friendly. Nobody is going to stop if you have a great idea or a great business proposal to put forth. Go for it.
Thank you for that positive answer. There is another question. There are so many questions regarding the challenges that you faced. I think you have already covered on that. And you have to, as you said, you have to expect challenges. And they are the ones that are going to make you stronger.
Challenges, I have covered the challenges which is related to the rural entrepreneurship, but yeah, you cannot just generally put one or two challenges, right? Every single day you will be encountering with a lot of challenges. If it is nothing major, then there will be a couple of minor challenges, but it is just that how able you are in solving problems is what really defines you as an entrepreneur. Because even in that next level of your entrepreneurship journey, you will be looking for funds, and you will be talking to a lot of people who can support you with funds. They all look for one aspect in every entrepreneur, that how able you are solving problems. These challenges are always in one form or another are problems, right? How you are tackling it, how positively you are facing it and tackling it and overcoming that, and moving forward is what they are also testing it. So be prepared for that. You cannot really expect one particular challenge which is applicable across the domains. You must be planning to start some particular business in some other area. Maybe it's in manufacturing, or maybe it is in IT, or maybe it is in artificial intelligence, or machine learning, or any of this area. You must be starting some business, right? So the challenges are different in different areas, but it is just that you need to ensure that these are all not bucking you down, it's not killing your spirit.
Thank you. And now there are a few questions so specifically to you. I think they want some support from you, perhaps. How about preparing project report? How can you please tell us about how you prepared the project report and feasibility study? I don't think it is a scope of. We don't have that much of time to dwell deep into this. Maybe if you can share your.
Yeah, I can guide you some of the process that you can follow just to ensure that you get a better project report. So don't think that you can do a project report all by yourself. You can just get a support of a professional CA if you're going for a professional project report, but ensure that you be a crucial part of that project report, because a project report only if you approach a particular CA or a guy who is well versed in creating a project report, they just create a project report and give it to you. But that is not your project report. That is a project report that they think that it possibly work really well in the market. But what I would suggest is that identify a good CA, sit with them, and take them through the end-to-end process that you're planning. And who are the stakeholders, what are the money that is involved, how exactly you're going to bring it, how exactly you are going to bring the money from the market, your cash plans, your revenue plans, everything, every single thing. If you can sit with them line by line, you just explain it to that CA and then make a custom crafted business plan just for you. That is the best way to do that. Initially, I also did that, just for submitting it into a bank, you need a project report. So you just go to a CA and he will be asking some random questions, and based on the random questions, you will be getting a project report. But that is hardly the report that you're going to execute at the ground level. So ensure you sit with them, take them through the actual plan of action that you outlined or envisioned in your brain, and then make a business report based on that. But always try to seek out a professional support in that. But you need to have a learning by yourself also. Then only you will understand what exactly he or the other person put it in the project report. So understand everything, but try to get it done through a professional guy who has done that.
So I think we'll take one more question. It's 5 already. There is a question by Ashwin from Ashwin Raj. He's asking. It's a very naive question, but then maybe he has plans. Was it easy to save money first, and when you had to spend more and more for improvement? Like, he just wants to know how you raised your funds.
Yeah. Okay. So initially, there is a lot of factors that is adding up to saving funds or holding money back into the system for your further scaling up process. One of the things is that if you have a great business idea and you have a real, if you can exhibit that real fire in the belly, there are a lot of people out there to fund you. One thing is for sure, right? It is just that how you are projecting yourself out in there. Depending on that, you will get a lot of funds. But initially, what I would suggest is that how exactly you want to grow is the question. Then whether it is you wanted to bootstrap it by yourself, or you wanted to raise fund from outside, or taking some loan from the bank. It all depends on what kind of a business that you're doing. Imagine that you wanted to start a manufacturing business, and then there is a heavy capital required. You can do multiple ways. Approach multiple ways. One is that you can go for an existing manufacturer and get it done through them if you have a specific USP with your product. So I would suggest that to an extent in the initial stages, bootstrapping is much more advisable. It is just that that will give you also a time frame for proving yourself that okay, this particular business is working, it is showing results. Now that it is showing results, let me just take you to an investor and show the results to them. Because investors are constantly looking at the results. If you have a solid results that okay, I have X amount of revenue from this market, or I have so much amount of followers or subscribers for my application in App Store, you can show it to them. Basically, the traction when you show it to them, they feel that confident. Okay, yeah, I mean this guy is talking some sense, and the product is also really good. Let me invest. So if you have that kind of convincing and a convincing business model and a great product with you, I mean money will come to you. It's just that you need to look at the right forum.
Thank you. And there are still so many questions left, but then time is limited. Manas, as you said, time is business, business is money. So that is equal to time is money. So we don't want to take too much of your time. Now we will wrap up our session. Thank you very much, Manas. I have a student here who is going to propose vote of thanks. Let me invite Anjana, who is a student of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Ahilya School of Engineering and Technology. Anjana, are you available?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Anjana, you can go ahead. Please propose a vote of thanks.
A warm good evening to all. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks speech and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this webinar happen. On behalf of Ahilya Group of Academic Institutions, I extend my sincere gratitude to our chief guest, Mr. Manas Madhu, for sparing his valuable time to grace the occasion. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on rural entrepreneurship and numerous opportunities that lies ahead. It was indeed an amazing experience for all of us. Next, I would like to thank the torch bearers of this event, Dr. Piyashri Mahadevan Pillai, Director, Ahilya Group Academic Institution, and Dr. Krishna Kumar Kishore, Assistant Director, Ahilya Group Academic Institution, for extending their wholehearted support in organizing this webinar. I sincerely thank the members of REDC of Ahilya School of Management, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, and National Service Scheme of Ahalya School of Engineering and Technology to make this event happen. I also thank our webinar coordinators, Ms. Bindu Valu, Ms. Preja, and Ms. Vijita Khan for choosing such an apt topic for this session. Without the support of the faculty members and my friends, this wouldn't have become such a great event. I thank you all. Last but not least, I would like to thank all the participants for gracing this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjana. And I thank Manas for sparing 1 hour of your time for us. And then we will keep troubling you because now we are forming a very strong REDC, like Rural Entrepreneurship Development Cell in Ahalya School of Management. And also we have Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, IEDC, and NSS unit. So we are planning to do some strong work in the rural area. And we have also... Somebody is... Okay. Somebody was just cross-talking. And so we will definitely come to you for guidance.
Yeah,
So please support our students.
Anytime.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.